you know, you feel like you want the earth to like crack open and swallow you whole and you'll never come back because you deserve that. Like, you feel so small in that moment. But I think ultimately you realize things happen like that. Like cooking it's crazy, it's chaos, you're doing things in the moment, you're cooking over live fire. Like, of course things are gonna go wrong.
Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode. My name is Kevin O and you're listening to the Monday Arvo podcast. I sat down with Danielle Alvarez. In this episode, we'll jump back to where it all started. Before she was running the show at Fred's, before the cookbooks and the reputation, Danielle was just someone who really loved food. She shares what it's like stepping into some of the most iconic kitchens in the world, what she learned, and how those moments still shape her today. Hey Danielle, how are you?
I'm great, Kevin.
It's an honor to have you on the show. Thank you for your time.
My pleasure.
I mean, your name pretty much speaks to itself, but for those people who might not know you, would you be able to introduce yourself?
Yeah. My name is Danielle Alvarez. I'm a chef, cookbook author, food writer. I grew up in Miami, Florida. I trained in the US. I moved to California to start my cooking career there, and really fell in love with farm-to-table cooking, probably there, because there's such an abundance of really beautiful fresh produce, small farms, almost everything organic. And then it was, I don't even know how. I mean, I know how, but somehow I moved to Australia. I was contacted by a restaurant group here, and I was ready to make a big move. I'm not sure that I was ready to like open a restaurant and be a head chef, but I thought, let's do it in another country. Right, so if it doesn't work out, I can just come home.
A little deeper
we'll talk about that. But anyways, that's me. So I moved to Sydney back in 2014. It's been over a decade now. I'm still here, still cooking. I opened and ran that restaurant called Fred's for 6-7 years, and then I've been working freelance and with you over the last couple of years.
Yeah. I want to start with the early time of your career.
Yeah.
I've been to Fred's multiple times when you were there, and then now we're working together, knowing your food and you. If I had to guess, the story goes you've grown up in this family where family dinner is important, and you're the one always helping mom next to her in the kitchen, learning from her. And as soon as you turned like 16, did you naturally become a chef?
No, not at all. Because my family, food was very much centered around the home. No one in my family had ever worked in any form of hospitality, they were like accountants and bankers and lawyers and that, those kind of like quote unquote respectable jobs. So I didn't even consider it. Food was something I loved and appreciated, but I had no interest in doing it professionally. So I worked in art history. I went to university, I studied art history. I left there and I worked in galleries and museums, and pretty quickly, I'd say within 2 to 3 years of that, I was like, well, this is not fulfilling for me. I want to make something. I want to do something with my hands. Every time I was at work, I was thinking about cooking at home and what I was going to make that weekend. And, I started to do little like catering things just for friends on the side, I didn't know what I was doing. I'm sure it was all terrible, but they let me do it. And then I'm very much like, if I'm going to learn something, I'm going to go the route of going to school. I'll get the degree. So I went to culinary school. I got a degree at a great culinary school in Miami. And then as part of my completing the degree, I had to do an internship. And that's when I wrote a letter to the French Laundry, which is, 3 Michelin star kitchen in the US. And at the time, this was like the early mid 2000s. I'd say they were still really like at the top in that like world's 50 best context. So I didn't really think I'd get it, but they said yes. And then I moved, I went there. It was a 3-month thing, but I knew I would stay longer. I knew I really wanted to make that go a bit further, and it did.
Right. Do you have any episode that remember?
Like nightmare episodes? I mean, I'll tell you my first day there, so I was terrified. So I went to culinary school, but I'd still never worked in a restaurant. So my first job was working at the French Laundry, 3 Michelin star kitchen. I arrived like 15 minutes early because I, like you just want to arrive early to work. Yeah. And this guy, he was, I guess, in charge of all of the stagiaires and interns. And he met me outside the door and was like, it's great that you're keen, but don't ever show up early ever again. Oh. And I was like, it was the first thing he said to me. It was the first interaction. I was like, oh shit. Like, okay, we're not in Toto. We're not in Kansas anymore. Like, this is real. This is serious. These people are intense. This is hardcore. And, I think I brought a lot of like bubbly, happy energy, and very quickly that got crushed down to like focus, head down, work hard. And it was a great experience, but there were a few other things like that I think were just harsh. It was a really intense environment. Right. I was learning so much about produce and seeing incredible ingredients. Like they had a beautiful garden across the road from the restaurant. They were flying in beautiful fresh lobsters from Maine all the way to California. So you got to see the best of the best. And to see a high performing team in action is super impressive. Ultimately, I didn't really want to be in that sort of setting. I wanted things to be a little bit more like enjoyable and happy. I've always felt life is short, and I don't want to work myself into the grave early. And also from a food perspective, when you work in those really fine dining settings, there's an incredible amount of waste that's produced. I'm sure now there's better ways of managing it, but at the time, to go through like an entire bunch of carrots to pick out 2 that are exactly the size that the chef wanted just felt really silly to me. And it took something out of the soul of the food. So I went a slightly different route, but I'm still super grateful for everything that I learned there. Yeah. I also worked on the floor there. I was a waiter. Which is, for all chefs, I think that should be required, that you spend some time working front of house. Teaches you a lot of appreciation for the skill of the people on that side of the business, and also, managing guests and hearing from them directly what they think about the food, or, any sort of comments they have about the experience. Being able to deal with it on the spot is, it's an important lesson. Yeah.
Nice. And then you moved to Chez Panisse?
Yeah, well, not at first. From there, I went to San Francisco and worked in a few smaller restaurants there that also... this is where I really started to cook, like get my hands in the food, be on section. And almost everywhere I worked changed the menu every day. From there, then I went to Chez Panisse, which is another iconic California restaurant. Been open for over 55 years, run by Alice Waters, and that was the greatest cooking experience of my life.
What was it like stepping into the kitchen for the first time?
In Chez Panisse?
Yeah.
I remember it exactly because I went to do a trial, and I remember my flatmate at the time, she's still my friend now, Jessica, she was also a cook, and she was like, whatever you do, just like have a sense of urgency, which also, that's a big thing at the French Laundry. There's signs everywhere, sense of urgency. Yeah. And I've always taken that with me. Like, you never want to just be like looking lazy or slacking off in the kitchen. Like, just focus. And even if you have 30 minutes to do a job, if you can get it done in 10, do it in 10, and get on to something else. Yeah. So I came in with that energy, and I could tell that they weren't really like that, they actually achieved a whole lot more than almost anywhere I worked, but they did it with such a like calm, graceful manner, that it was, I was like, I want to move like that. I want to be able to cook like that one day. It was such control, but still getting shit done. But the first night they put me on the larder section helping someone for my trial. And then I got the job, and I think the first night they wanted to put me on grill. And I think the chef saw my face just like completely drop in panic as soon as he said that. So he was like, actually, actually, no, let's put you on larder and you can get to grill later in the week. I was like, oh God, okay, thank God. But, you know, just to give a bit of context to that. So all the chefs would arrive at like 2 p.m. for a 6 p.m. service start. And we would do everything from scratch. So between 2 and 6 and with like a 30-minute break, clean down, get set up, really just like 3.5 hours of prep. We'd prep everything from scratch. I mean, like make pasta, make the fillings, prep all the meat, make a jus, like crazy stuff that you'd get done in that short amount of time. But we would come in and we would discuss the menu of the day with the chef. And he would say like, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I feel, but it was totally up to you to create it. Wow. So then we would pick the sections. There was, larder, pasta or second course, whatever it was that day, and then main course and garnish. So 4 sections, and then obviously pastry did their own thing. We would all rotate between those sections. Whoever was on grill would choose what section they wanted to be on the next day. And so every day was different.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's hard.
Yeah, it was wild. But it was super fun.
Yeah. It is.
Because also you only had to do one dish.
Right, okay.
You know?
Yeah,
so you could like really focus on making it amazing.
To make that perfect.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. But for 100 people every night.
Okay. Yeah. What happened if someone fails? Like if someone like fucks it up or anything?
I mean, I fucked it up. I'll tell you about one time that I fucked it up that was really bad, that burned in my mind. I still can like take myself back to that spot, and it's horrible. But we were making paella on the fire, over an open fire. And this was on a Monday. So Mondays was a shorter menu. It was 3 course only, not 4 course. So there would have been like a little salady thing to start, and then you go right into the paella. But I burned the first paella. Okay. Like burned it. Burn. Like you tasted it. It tasted totally. Like there was no spot in the tray that like wasn't burned. No, I couldn't be like, oh, maybe around the edge. No. And then the owner, Alice herself, founder, whatever, she came in for dinner that night, and she was the first one to sit down. So it was like a I think a 30-minute wait to get the next one. Like I'd already had the next one going, but for the next one to be ready, it just felt like, you feel like you want the earth to like crack open and swallow you whole, and you'll never come back because you deserve that. Like you feel so small in that moment. But I think ultimately you realize things happen like that. Like cooking it's crazy. It's chaos. You're doing things in the moment. You're cooking over live fire. Like of course things are going to go wrong. You have to just be able to, I don't know, predict it, try to avoid it, and when it does go wrong, fix it quickly and move on. Because it happens.
You've mentioned about the schedule a little bit. How was the daily or weekly schedules when you were working at Chez Panisse?
It was fixed. So we would work, I think you either worked Monday to Friday or Tuesday to Saturday. It was always closed on a Sunday. Okay. And you only did one shift. You only did dinner. Because so there's a restaurant and there's a cafe upstairs. The cafe does lunch and dinner, and their roster I think was changing a bit more often. So you do 2 seatings, 50 packs each. In between the seatings we would all make a plate of what we were serving that night, and as chefs we would go sit down and have our family meal at like 8:00 for 30 minutes while the changeover was happening in the dining room.
Right.
Have wine every night if you wanted. I mean, I didn't every night, and then go back and do the second seating. Nice. Like so civilized.
That's very important, I think.
Oh, family meal?
Trying your own food that you're going to put up on the pass. Yeah. I always tell my chefs to make sure you come in for dinner where you work.
1,000%, yeah. And that's even what you do. You might be able to do that once or twice a year, Like, and they don't know, because to your point, it's really different to sit down and eat something as a whole. Yeah. As opposed to like, oh, okay, I've tasted a bit of that sauce, that's seasoned. Oh, okay, I've tasted a bit of this ingredient, that's seasoned. But what about when it's all together? Like, is it too rich Does it need more acid? Does it have too much acid? Does it, are the textures right altogether? That's something you really only get when you sit down and eat it like that. So I'm eternally grateful that I had that experience, because now I need to, I can sort of like do that in my mind, because I had so many years of training on taste. But, I don't think that's anything we do for chefs these days.
Yeah. It's a whole another topic to go through. It's a whole other topic,
I know. Let's not turn this into whinging about the next generation. Let's not
dig to the rabbit hole.
Totally.
You mentioned that Alice Water was like owner and founder.
Yeah.
I thought you would have worked with Alice in the kitchen. But
no, she was out of the kitchen by the time I was there, and I think had been out of the kitchen for a long time. She, I think, has always been a proponent of like, do your years in the kitchen, and then she would say you need to at some point look past the stove. You need to understand what your purpose is. If it's in food, great. Hers was that she wants to teach young children about where food comes from, how to make it. So she has a program called the Edible Schoolyard Foundation, where she goes into schools, they plant gardens, and then kids have programs where they harvest whatever's in the garden, and they have cooking classes in the school. So that became her focus. She was still very much in the restaurant, tasting the food like almost nightly if she was in town. But just being around her is inspiring. Sometimes it's not even about the cooking, it's just about the person that has been able to achieve something so important, and witnessing people that like don't compromise, don't take no for an answer. We only do the best, we only use the best ingredients here. That was incredible.
Do you have any memorable episode in the kitchen, good or bad?
Chez Panisse. Well, I talked about the bad, I think, already. No, I'd say it was so incredibly positive. And I think the thing that stuck with me most from there, aside from like the best ingredients will always yield the best food, for sure, was just that you can cook in a very harmonious environment, peaceful, beautiful. I think I learned there a lot about beauty, not just in the food, but if you create beautiful spaces for the people that work in the kitchen, like if you make the kitchen beautiful, that's inspiring. I think that will kind of like come out of the chefs in ways that you can't imagine or expect. I hate working in kitchens now that are just like all stainless and dark and that don't actually give any sort of care to the chefs, because if you don't give care to the chefs, well then they're not going to give care to the food. So I think I realized that is a really important part of cooking for me, is that you got to create beautiful environments so that you can create beautiful things. Yeah.
And I truly believe that the energy carries on.
Absolutely.
The environment, to the chefs, to the food, and then to the customers.
1000%. Yeah, it's that level of like craftsmanship and care.
So after the Chez Panisse, you moved to Australia. You're deeply connected with farmers and growers here in Sydney. Coming from a whole another country, building those new relationships must not have been easy.
No.
How did you create at the first that connection and kept them strong?
So there were 2 years between when I first arrived in Sydney and when we opened Fred's. The group got really busy with other projects, and the fit out and design and the build took a lot longer. But I'm so grateful actually for those 2 years, because I mean, I learned a lot about just how restaurants operate in Australia. And B, as you said, it gave me time to build those relationships with farmers. I think it's basic. Building relationships is all about connections. So face to face, on the phone, going to the farm, visiting, talking, and doing that over a prolonged period of time builds trust. You definitely can't do it via email. You definitely can't do it via text. And I mean, again, I don't want to just complain about like things that are happening now, but I think people forget like that's a relationship. You guys work, without them, I can't do what I do. And I guess without me, they have no one to sell to. So like everyone is being helped in that relationship, and you can make it enjoyable. It can be fun. It can be super interesting, but you got to see yourselves as like a team. So I knew that I needed those people. I knew I had to go out, meet them, find them, build those relationships. And farmers are amazing people. Like they're so easy to get on with. They're just chill. They love being out in the garden all day. They want to stay out of the city. And, you know, in a lot of ways, I wish I could do that at some point too. I don't think I'm cut out for it. But anyway, that time was good.
And if there were any challenges along the way, would you be able to share them? Like,
oh my God, so many.
Yeah.
What, from like starting Fred's or within
the relationship with like farmers?
Yeah, the biggest challenge was, so small farms will grow a variety of items. You have to buy as much as you think. Like you have to do this game of estimating how much you think you're going to use, whatever. And a lot of times, you know, that's almost impossible. But they also don't have like an infinite number of X. Let's say it's like turnips or something. If I'm putting 2 turnips on every plate that goes with lamb, and I need to have, let's say I sell 30 portions a night for 5 nights. I don't know what the math is there, but whatever, 100 and some portions, and I need 300 turnips. Well, what if he only has 200? Because that happened all the time. Okay, then I have to change the menu. And then the chefs, you know, they don't know what they're doing, and they have to constantly be like asking me, and I have to be directing. So I really had to figure out a system where I could order the maximum from the farms, but keep the menu, you know, the changes had to be pretty minor. I couldn't be doing big dish overhauls every single day. And also, again, that they, because of their margins, they could only deliver into Sydney once a week. So that meant that, you know, by day 5 of something, it might not be as fresh as you want it to be. So like, again, you have to think about, well, what am I going to do on days 6 and 7 if at the time we were a 7-day operation? Like just the logistics of it was super challenging, because I totally took for granted that in California, the farms were in a pretty close radius to the restaurant. So you could get things 3-4 times a week. At least 3 times a week, there was a big farmer's market that if you needed a top up of something, you could go pick up 6-8 boxes of perfect heirloom tomatoes if you wanted. And that just isn't how it works here. It takes a lot more planning. The distances are far greater. The labor's hugely more expensive. So it just means there's a lot more problems, and it just didn't work how I imagined at the start.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. In the next episode, we'll dive into Fred's, her leadership journey, cookbooks, and what she's been up to more recently. So stay tuned.